right, welcome everyone. Make sure everyone's in from the waiting room and we'll get started. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sonia Norton, and I co-chair the WCSA Professional Development Committee together with Emma Zaffron, who's helping us with some tech today. We're excited to welcome you all to the first event in WCSA's Skills Building series, Being the Face of the Office, Skills Building for Staff Assistants, co-hosted with the Modernization Staff Association. Please note that this event is being recorded and it will be available following the event for future reference and for folks who couldn't join us today. And if you're new to WCSA's and MSA's work, welcome. The Women's Congressional Staff Association, or WCSA, is a bipartisan congressional staff organization run by and for women congressional staffers. WCSA is dedicated to fostering professional and personal development and strengthening support systems for women staffers, regardless of party affiliation, background, job title, or experience. You can visit womenscsa.com to learn more or to get involved. And with that, I will hand it over to Haley from MSA.
Thanks so much. My name is Haley Wint, and I'm the Vice President of the Modernization Staff Association. We have great turnout today, so thank you to everyone here who showed up. The Modernization Staff Association is a bipartisan group that focuses on internal reform issues that primarily affect junior Hill staffers like yourselves. Our mission is to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of congressional staff by modernizing systems that affect our day-to-day operations. So if you're interested in joining MSA, I'll put our sign-up link in the chat.
Perfect. And so as anyone who has served as a staff assistant knows, staff assistants are crucial to office operations and success, yet your contributions to the office are too often overlooked, and substantive training and best practices discussions can be few and far between. That's why today's event is focused on connecting staff assistants to the resources available to you, as well as discussing best practices for the constituent services and the administrative operations you lead for your team. We appreciate our speakers joining us in their personal capacity to speak to each of these topics. At the end of each of these presentations, we will have some time for Q&A, so please submit your questions in the chat for Haley and Emma to add to the queue. If we have questions left at the end of our time together today, we will work on getting answers for you following the discussion. And if at any time you encounter problems with the Zoom meeting, please message Haley or Emma or email us at womenscsa@gmail.com, and we'll put that in the chat as well. And with that, it is my pleasure to hand it over to the president of MSA and our first speaker, Ananda Bhatia.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm Ananda. I'm currently a legislative assistant with the Modernization Committee and founder and president of the Modernization Staff Association. And I'm super excited to talk to you all today about resources for House and Senate staff. So, just want to note that this is definitely not a comprehensive list of every single resource that has ever existed, but it's just kind of a compilation of some of the maybe lesser known ones or recently added resources that are useful to you in both chambers. So starting off with mental health. One of the first things I did when I joined the Hill was figure out how to get free therapy for myself. So it's great. It's a great resource on both the House and Senate side. Their respective offices of employee assistance offer counseling sessions for staff and for interns. On the House side, you just email the email listed in the chat, and on the Senate side, on Webster under the employee assistant webpage, you can submit a request to set up a counseling session. During COVID, they'll do remote sessions with you over the phone or over Zoom. And during non-COVID times, they'll meet with you in person if you'd like. I know for the House, it's most of the sessions are over in the Ford building, so on campus still. And for the most part, just functions like normal. You can meet as often as you want, and it's entirely free. So great resources. Meditation apps are somewhat new too. Calm is pretty recently acquired by the House. It's a great app you can get on your phone, a free subscription that has meditation services. If you've used things like Headspace before, it's very similar to that. And then on the Senate side, similarly, they have both My Stress Tools and virtual mindfulness sessions that they offer on a weekly basis that are remote. under Mind Care. Professional development. This was huge when I learned that everyone in the House and Senate has free access to Mango. It's a foreign language learning platform. Really great. They'll do a placement test with you at the beginning. So if you're, partially through learning a language, you can hop on, do a placement test, and it'll put you at a higher level than, starting from scratch. Or they've got tons of languages, start a brand new one. Either way, again, free service. You just request to create an account through HouseNet or through Webster. Just search for Mango and you can submit a request to get a free account. LinkedIn Learning is also available for both House and Senate staffers. They've just got tons of different courses and certifications available for staff. So whether you're wanting to continue your Hill career or going off the Hill, you can list on LinkedIn or on your resume that you've completed certain courses or certification, things like public speaking or management, etc. So they've got a variety of professional development opportunities there. Career coaching is a really big one. Also, this program in the House I know is pretty new and just phenomenal. The CAO Coach Program is a program where they have former chiefs of staff and district directors serve as coaches for anyone at any level. If you ever want just advice on moving forward in your career, on how to deal with something difficult in your office, maybe something that you would like to talk to a chief about or a leadership team but don't feel comfortable talking to someone in your own office about it for whatever reason, you can set up an appointment with a CAO coach, and they are just phenomenal people, and they'll just sit down with you and help you with all things Hill related. And it's just a great program in general because, of course, these other resources are useful for general professional development, but the coaches are people who have specifically years and years of Hill experience, so who are really knowledgeable about things that are obviously very specific to our jobs and our workplace. Similarly, on the Senate side, there is management training that you can access also through the EAP website under Webster. And it's the same sort of thing where you can set up an appointment with someone to talk about, again, problems you're having in your day-to-day job at work, or also career coaching if you're trying to figure out what your next move might be on or off the Hill. They can sit down and talk to you about that entirely free. And then finally, we've got the House Staff Academy and the Senate Learning Center. Both are resources that offer online classes in kind of video format where they're on demand. You just click on it and watch a class. And they also have live instructor-led trainings that are normally, there's in-person offerings when we're not in COVID times. Because of COVID, I think they're almost all virtual right now on both the House and Senate side, that you can take classes on, again, a variety of topics from things like improving your mail program to management to writing skills, communication, etc. Then wellness. Life Care is a resource offered in both the House and Senate. I have never used it before, and someone was just explaining to me how they used it. It spans so many different issues. My understanding of it is basically you can go on and ask experts. It's a service that the House pays and Senate pay for, to talk about anything you're dealing with in your life, like organizational issues. Like someone told me they went on and said they were searching for apartments and were really overwhelmed with how to start looking for a new apartment in DC. And they went to Life Care and they helped them walk through that entire process. So really kind of a catch-all resource. You can go to the Life Care page on Webster or HouseNet and just read through everything that they offer. But basically anything happening in your personal life that's non-work related, they can help you find where to go. They're kind of like the first call of like real world issues is how I like to think of them. Both the House and Senate have fitness centers for staff. In the House, it's in Rayburn, and the Senate's in Dirksen. Obviously, a lot more affordable than the typical $200 a month gym membership in DC. So $20 a month, roughly. I think in the House, it's $19 if you get a yearly membership and $22 a month if you do month by month. And in the Senate, it's $20 regardless, but it's right around that price point. They're pretty good. I've been to the House gym, proud member. You've got your showers right there, so you can work out right before or after work. They've got fitness classes. And honestly, not super utilized. Like they're not super busy when you go. So like you'll always find the machine you're looking for. And then Diet ID, Food Smart, and Well Coaching are house-only resources, so I'll briefly touch on them. But the first two are really nutrition-focused resources. You can walk through like a quiz to figure out, what are areas in your nutrition where there are some gaps that you might want to fill. They have lots of recipe ideas and shopping guides, that kind of thing. And then Well Coaching is awesome. Also a proud user of this service. Basically, just email them and you can set up an appointment with the free nutrition and exercise coach. And it's like a personal trainer and nutrition coach all in one. They'll work with you on meal plans, on personalized fitness routines if you're training for a marathon or if you're just trying to get into shape, whatever it is. You can just set up, regular weekly appointments all for free. And then finance. So of course, not a comprehensive list of all of the resources. You should absolutely talk to, your finance contact in your office or the House and Senate to talk about, if you want to look at student loan repayment programs or transportation benefits. There's a whole variety of different retirement and healthcare benefits available to Hill staff that I'm not going to get into, but just wanted to touch on a few that are not as well known or well utilized. So TSP, both House and Senate, hopefully you know that you are eligible for 5% matching for your retirement. So if you haven't gone in and changed your automatic contributions and want to change it to up to 5% of your paycheck, the House and Senate will match 5% back. So it's free money just sitting there. And definitely change your fund investments too if you haven't done that before. There's a video that I've got linked in this PowerPoint. Melissa Dargan, a former Hill staffer, has a whole series of financial planning tips and resources for Hill staff. They're wonderful. She walks through the TSP, which was very confusing to me until I watched her videos. And so absolutely recommend going in and tweaking where your money is going after you match it, because the automatic contributions they put in are pretty conservative. So if you're a junior staffer, of course, you make the decision that's right for you, but you can be making a lot more money over the rest of your lifetime if you change your funds to slightly higher risk but much higher reward contribution allocations. Then the federal credit union, on both the House and Senate side, there's a credit union you can join. Again, something that I personally, as a younger staffer, didn't know much about and still don't completely understand, except for the fact that I know that as a member of the credit union, which you only need to put in $5 to create an account and officially be a member. As long as you become a member now, which I did, you don't need to do anything more than hold $5 in and like add $1 or remove $1 once a year to show that you're still active in it. Even if you leave the Hill, you can stay a member as long as you start an account while you're on the Hill, and that includes for interns. And once you're a member of the credit union, you can have access to just a lot better mortgage interest rates and car loans down the road. So again, it's something that I'm not personally thinking about right now, but I went ahead and made my account so that hopefully if I ever get to that point in my life, I'll have that access in the future. House and Senate both have child care centers that are available for Hill staffers. And then the government discounts I listed, the next page will have a link to, on the House side and the Senate, there's a whole slew of different services that you can get discounts to just because you're a government worker or a Hill staffer. And that includes things like your phone bill. So if you're paying for your own phone bill and you got like AT&T or Verizon, you can get a reduced rate for being a federal employee. So this first list is the House Services and Discounts Guide. It's awesome. The CEO put it together, just a really good comprehensive list of pretty much everything we talked about today, and also some additional resources, including some of those government discounts, etc., of resources that are available to you as a House staffer. The Senate Employee Assistance Program is where pretty much everything I talked about today is housed on the Senate side. That link will take you to their page under Webster, and you can again play around there because there's more resources than what I talked about today under every single section we mentioned. I've also linked to MSA, written the SALC Best Practices Guide and a Working from Home Guide that have some resources listed at the end of them. And then finally, your staff associations are a great resource to you always. So we've got a comprehensive list of staff associations, their descriptions and their contact information linked there as well if you want to get involved with other organizations on the Hill. So with that, thank you. Happy to take any questions. And if there's something I don't know the answer to, I'm more than happy to figure out that answer and get back to you. So feel free to ask away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ananda. So one thing that you touched on briefly was first call. And so just thinking through kind of the daily life of a staff assistant, get in and at least in my experience, the office would have any number of asks or assignments. Can we do this? I don't know. Who should we turn to? Like who's available or what is available for staff assistants who are just like trying to figure out a task for the first time or like trying to find more resources to try and figure out kind of the capacity of the role?
Yeah, absolutely. First Call is a great resource for all staff, definitely for staff assistants. We just onboarded a new clerk on our committee, and the first thing I told him was, if there's ever something anyone asks you to do and you don't know where to start with how to do it, call First Call. So yeah, their extension 58000, got it memorized. They're just an incredibly helpful group of people that can, again, either if they don't have the answer, they know who to connect you to. So.
Amazing. And then you were talking about just onboarding a new staffer. What would you say is the number one piece of advice you would share with a new staff assistant?
Yeah, I think just the biggest challenge of being a Hill staffer and joining this crazy place is that there's a lot of institutional knowledge that you need to learn. There's a lot of like things that no one tells you, but you're kind of expected to know. So I'd say the first thing is really to reach out and meet 5 other staff assistants right off the board, right off the bat, so that you can form those relationships and have somebody else to ask when you've got questions that you don't know the answer to. An easy way to do that, again, through staff associations. That's a great way to meet other people, or just to reach out to other members in your delegation. Reach out to the staff association in every other office in your state. That's a great way to form new connections. First Call is a great place to start. There's also a new onboarding training that Staff Academy is rolling out starting in February. I'm super excited about it. It's a all day, very, very comprehensive training on like everything you need to know in your personal life and professional life as a new Hill staffer. And so that's a perfect place to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll have contacts for our staff associations, as well as MSA has that incredible guide for the variety of staff associations available on the Hill. So thank you so much, Ananda. And again, if anyone has questions, feel free to send them in the chat to Emma Zaffron or to Haley Wendt, and we'll make sure to get those in line. And with that, we will head over towards constituent services for staff assistants with our speakers, Carrie and Brenton.
Thanks, Sonia, for that. Like she said, I'll be covering the constituent services portion. Let me just share my screen real quick. All right, face of the office. Okay, so I'd like to start by posing a question. Did you know that 1 out of 6 chief of staffs on the Hill were once staff assistants? I just figured that out recently. It just shows you the importance of, what our job can do and what we can do if we just put our head down and just get to work. And let's see. So mostly, our job duties consist of constituent services, which includes flags, tours, and phone calls, all of which are equally important. So I like to start off with flags, though. So I typically like to stick to the sundown rule when it comes to flags, which basically means why put it off tomorrow? We can finish it today. That's a quote by Walmart CEO and the founder of Walmart. I'm from Arkansas. My name is Carrie. and I work for Congressman French Hill's office, and he is a member in Arkansas. And that's why the sundown rule is important to me. So basically, whenever I receive requests, I make sure to let the constituent know that we received their flag request, and we would basically be fulfilling the request. And whenever we're done, we'll let them know. Another thing that I like to do is just take the extra step of folding the flag, the American style way, which is the triangular style, which means that you're folding the flag basically the way that the military does. Just taking that extra step of shows that the constituent knows that you are in need, and you can fulfill the request. Also, it's best to keep a spreadsheet, which means that a basic Excel sheet would be fine, which contains the constituents' contact information, the flag that they ordered, and when they need it by. Next is tours. It's pretty much similar. Stick to the sundown rule as well. You want to let them know that tours may not be available at the moment due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but at least keeping that communication with them and letting them know that if something does change in the meantime, we have your contact information. We can reach back out to you. It's also always good to over communicate with constituents. Sometimes it's hard for constituents to understand that tours are not available right now and they can't view the Capitol or White House. But if you just sympathize with them and communicate with them by email, or maybe give them a phone call, letting them know straight up, we can help you out if this was available, but at the moment it's not. Also, you want to maintain a regular spreadsheet with this as well. That way you can always go back to it, and you can have interns and assign interns to do this process if that needs to be done. Next is phone calls. Essentially, you want to figure out the reason for the call. So we get plenty of calls to a congressional office, but each person has a reason for their call. Once you have that reason, you can kind of delegate what needs to be done after that. So I would advise taking out all useful information, which is their phone number, their email address, even their address if they're comfortable giving out their home address. That way we can get in touch with them after the phone call. Always assure that the constituent's voice is being heard. That's their main thing, especially when you're calling about opinionated calls or trying to get the congressman's or congresswoman's opinion on certain issues. As long as their voice is being heard, I think that we're providing good constituent services when that happens. And always remember that the constituent is always right. It's just like, when you're in sales, the customer is always right. If you keep that attitude, you can avoid getting into arguments, and you can make sure that their voice is being heard. Okay. So I'm just giving my perspective on the House side. Brenton will cover the Senate side, and I'll let him take it from here. If you have any questions for me, you can always email me here. My email address is listed, or you can place a question in the chat box. All right, Brendan, it's your turn.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today. My name is Brenton Krieger. I work for Senator Tammy Duckworth. I was a staff assistant back in 2019 for about a year, and now I'm a legislative correspondent. I've been an LC for her economic policy team for about 2 years now. So I'm happy to be here with you guys. Hopefully I can give you a little perspective on my time being a staff assistant and kind of what I learned from there. So I will first touch on what Carrie touched on last, which is constituent phone calls. And then I'll move into working on tours, which I know a lot of staff assistants haven't worked on now because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but that was definitely more of my wheelhouse when I was doing staff assistant work. But I know that you all have been through a challenging time throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. I feel like phone calls have gotten worse from, well, as an intern coordinator as well when I was a staff assistant, so I had to work with them a lot, and I would hear the troubling stories that they have with taking constituent phone calls. Of course, it's not all of them, but sometimes, you have a bad caller. And I know it's difficult, but just try to connect with them the best you can. And then also, I think throughout this time, which something that no one ever told me a lot of times when I first started off as an intern, they were just kind of like, I know sometimes it gets tough with constituents on the phone, but I just got to push through it. But I think it's important to recognize that you all are humans and you're in a tough workplace. Working on the Hill is it's definitely not easy. And especially when you're a staff assistant, you are forced to take on so many different responsibilities. So I think just keeping in mind here, like it's important to take breaks and that your mental health is important here. So if you have a tough call, feel free to take a lap around the block or walk around your house. I don't know what your workplace is now, but just keep that in mind. And as a preface here, we used Internet Quorum in our office. That's how we processed all of our constituent phone calls. And then we have about 10 interns working virtually right now. I think there's about 5 of them doing virtual phones. So that's how we do it now. And it's been working pretty well. If you have any specific questions there pertaining to your office, I know each office does things a little differently. Feel free to email me. But Gary, if you want to, okay, great, thank you. So now I'll talk about tours. I know that it's something that many of the staff assistants have not focused on or have not worked on since the COVID pandemic started. So this might be a little daunting. I did all my tours work right before the pandemic, so I have a little bit of knowledge here. I know that each office does this differently. As I mentioned, in the Senate, in my office, we use Internet Quorum, which we had all of our tours come in via the website. The constituent would pick a selection of tours on our website, put in their information, and then it would get assigned to me on IQ. And then from there, I would complete it with the help of interns. And so I think it's just important to, like, you might be new to this job and there might not be any other staff assistant there that you're working with who's ever done this before. Just communicate with your supervisors in the office. I'm confident that at least one person in your office has probably worked on tours or helped the staff assistants do tours when tours were actually a thing. So I think that building communications in your office is really important. And perhaps they have like a handbook. Luckily, when I started, we had a big handbook. I think this is definitely prevalent in some of the offices that have been around the Hill for quite some time. I think we got ours from Dick Durbin in the Senate, who's been in the Senate for quite some time, as we know. So that was really helpful. And if you don't have one in your office, maybe some of the other offices that have been there longer in your delegation do have a handbook. And what I learned throughout my time working on tours is that it's really important to delegate. Feel free to have the interns help you out. Doing capital tours, filling them out online is really quite easy. And so it only takes a couple minutes to do one tour to book it. So feel free. I think it's really helpful to have the interns help you out. And then you can focus on some of the harder tours to book that are more in advance, like the FBI or the Bureau of Engraving and Printing tours, which are a little bit more challenging, or the White House. And then I know that some offices sometimes you might prefer to do tours yourself in person when you have constituents come to the office and then you do the tours yourself. There are professionals in the Capitol that do it as their main job. They're so talented. I know they're not doing it right now, but when they do it once again, people have been doing Capitol tours for years and years. This is something that they've been doing for quite some time. So feel free to rely on them and send constituents their way. And you can do that on the Capitol Tours website. So that's how we did most of our tours in our office. And then if special occasions came, that's when we did personal tours. And then one thing I did learn when I was in a bind with a couple different offices, people you have the kind of a needy constituent who really wants a certain tour. And you might have not have filled it out in time or something might have happened. Don't hesitate to reach out to the White House tour office or the Bureau of Engraving and Printing or the FBI. Sometimes they do hold a certain amount of tours on hand. And so if you have a really constituent who won't stop emailing you and they really want this tour, it doesn't hurt to email the tour office directly to try to see if they have an opening. Yeah, and then I know as we've all been there working as a staff assistant, you have so much work going on. You have a lot of different responsibilities. You're juggling a lot of different things. And I know that a lot of people don't want to come to the Hill and work as staff assistant. They, of course, come with higher ambitions to work on policy or work in scheduling or do things like that. So it can be challenging working as a staff assistant at first. But and there's a lot of things that are often out of your control too. Like you could be applying for a job and you don't know how many connections other people have or how much experience other people have. But one thing you can work on is is what you have that's in your control. So the high quality work that you can put out, the great relationships that you can build in an office, those are some of the things that I learned when I was a staff assistant and trying to apply for better jobs is really building quality relationships in your office because they're your greatest asset. And then just showing that you're a hard worker that's willing to take on any responsibility that kind of that gets put onto you. So those are some of the things that I've learned that help me excel as a staff assistant. Happy to answer any questions you have. I guess we can go in the question and answer portion now.
Amazing. Thank you both. So as we're kind of moving towards this looming resurgence of tours happening again, what would you recommend for folks to do to really prepare organizationally or getting familiar with the tour system as we're looking at coming back to that aspect of the job?
I can hop in here. I think that definitely check if your office has some sort of handbook or some sort of guide that previous staff assistants used to help facilitate that process to get to know how your office handled tours in the past and just get all the documents ready, get all the emails prepped. Like I also used a lot of email templates when I was communicating with constituents because you're often just emailing the same thing and inputting slight amounts of data of like when your tour is and what tour it's for. So definitely start prepping those emails, start prepping those documents, have your supervisors look at them if you need, but definitely see if there's some sort of handbook that your office has used in the past. And then I would also just talk with people that have worked on the Hill. Maybe there's some older people who have moved up since then and are no longer staff assistants, but they were staff assistants at the time when tours were going on. Have conversations with them, ask them to go to coffee and just see how they did it. I think that there's a wealth of knowledge in these walls, and all you have to do is ask some people for coffee. Try to have these conversations before the tours really ramp up. Because once they do start allowing people to sign up, I'm sure there will be a floodgate of people wanting to come back to the Capitol because it's been so long.
Sorry, then it looks like we've got a question on flags as well. There's been some concern about whether we need to refold flags when they come from the flag office. Are they folded according to flag code, or is there anything we need to do when we receive a flag from the flag office?
Yeah, I can answer that. Our office takes the extra step of folding it the American style way, but you don't have to do that. I just think taking the extra step just shows the constituent that you actually care a little bit more. But you don't have to take the extra step to answer that question. They come already pre-folded. It's just kind of like a square style, but yeah, you don't have to take the extra step.
Okay, so sorry, just for clarification for my sake, are they folded according to the flag code? Are there multiple ways to fold a flag under the flag code?
That's a good question. I think we should come back to that. But I personally like to fold it the American flag style. That's the way I was taught in my office, but every office is different. But I'm not sure exactly the style that it comes in. It's just square though. I know that for sure.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely check on that. That's good to know that your office refolds them. Cool. And then we also, looks like we have a question. Do you have any advice for interns who have interned on the state level and are looking to become staff assistants on the Hill?
Yeah, I can hop in. Yeah, I think that just so you're intern on the state level, you intern in your state office, and you're looking to become a staff assistant on the Hill. I think that you can always start building your network. I think that's really helpful because it's also as important to have a network that can notify you when job openings are available. A lot of the time, it's just right place, right time. And you did a great first step in like an interning in a state Hill office. And so I think that's definitely a good step. But I think starting to build a connection there, and then you can always try to get an internship inside of Washington D.C. or for a D.C. office. Might be an easy way to just build your connection, and then also see if there's any differences between the state level work and then your DC office work. Because in our office, in the Senate side, there is some differences, especially if depending on kind of what track you want to get on. I think that we do offer sometimes internships in our office. You intern to the state, you can come work in DC as well. But I think that building building connections is a great first start to try to figure out if there's any jobs available in the office that you're looking for, or if there's, or any of your delegation offices.
Awesome. And I'll definitely also add that staff associations can be really helpful. We try to be helpful with building those networks. It's people who are looking to be involved and have events like this and other just events or mentorship opportunities. So definitely recommend reaching out to staff associations that work with junior staff or specifically helping people get on the Hill as well. And then let's see, one more question. So when I was a staff assistant, I had a pretty like brutal but expansive spreadsheet of flags and tours that were kind of in process or had been requested, so that I knew where everyone was, and so that when those persistent constituents would call in, I could tell them exactly what had already been requested, what was in process, so that they could have a full update kind of right at my fingertips. Would you just quickly speak to kind of the organization style that your offices use or that you found helpful, or things that you wish, just like, gosh darn it, why didn't someone tell me not to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in here, but our office just, is kind of, I guess, outdated in this area here. So we just stick to an Excel spreadsheet, which could get a little bit jumbled up at times. So I probably would suggest to clear it out whenever you're done. And also just keeps their information in another spreadsheet, just in case, if they are repeated flag requesters or tour requesters. But it can get a little wonky is my answer, but as long as you keep an eye on it, and it does organize you at the end of the day. Maybe Brittany can add what they do in the Senate. You said you use some type of system.
Yeah, we use Internet Quorum in ours, and as part of that, we have a discussions tab. And so, like, each person who files a tour request or a flag request has their own little, basically like their own little page associated with that request. And then on there, we have a discussions tab. And what we usually do is we put an update in whenever we get an update. So, like, say you booked your Capitol tour, we'd write booked Capitol tour January 25th, 2022. And then like tickets sent, and then whatever day that is. So like whenever you have an update, we would put it in there. I think if you don't have that, you can definitely create like a notes section as part of your Excel document. You can also have them in like email receipts. So like whenever there's an update to a person's flag request or a tour request, you can send them an email just to keep them updated. I think, as Carrie said, it's important to maintain communication with constituents to keep them appeased throughout sometimes a long process of booking tours. And so just maintaining that communication, I think, is really important. You can do that by, we did it through emails too. So we did it through the discussion tab on IQ, and then we also sent them emails. So that's what we found was a positive way to kind of incentivize people to not get upset with our office in case something didn't work out.
On the House side too, I don't know if they're on the Senate as well, but tour trackers and add-on you can purchase in your office. I know the person who runs it was a former Hill staffer. She's wonderful, and we used it in my old office. It's a great system that works with your CRM, like IQ, if that's what you use, or whichever one. Or as a standalone that does like all of this. They'll send automatic emails to constituents updating you on the different parts of the process. They'll respond to them if they didn't fill out their forms correctly automatically and get the right info for you. They'll do all the tracking, let you know when things are coming up. Really helpful.
Awesome. And then is there a best time of the week or anything like that when we should be requesting tours? How do we make the most of the limited availability that there is, especially as we see this kind of wave of tourists headed our way?
Yeah, I can't remember if they're like airlines where if you book a certain time, there's like more availabilities or anything like that. But I do remember especially before spring break was always a really busy time, or around like DC trip times. We tried to book a lot of our Capitol tours in advance. So we would book before like the spring break time, we would kind of book sets of 25 to 30 tour tickets. We starting in basically October or November of the year before. And then as things got closer, we would release the dates. That's how I was taught to do it. I'm not sure if that's the most fair or equitable way to do it, because some people, you kind of get other offices in trouble if they kind of wait till the last minute, but that's how we did ours. And then, but I can't remember specifically if there's a best time of week or when the tours get released. It's been a minute since I've looked on other websites, but I think that if you're familiar with when the tours get released, I think it was maybe like two months for the White House and maybe 3 months for FBI. But if you're familiar with those, just keeping track of when those are released. But I don't know off the top of my head specifically.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I don't
Awesome.
remember either because it's been so long since White House tours. But yes, they totally agree that like if you have a system like Tour Tracker, it'll do it automatically. It'll pop up and say, okay, this person asked for a tour on July 30th and it's now 3 months before July 30th, book it now. Or if you don't pay for a service like that, yeah, put it in your spreadsheet, like mark July 30th and then ask the spreadsheet to change a color when it's 3 months out or whatever. So that's like really easy visual cue for you to see exactly when to book it.
Awesome. Yeah. And then as they come back, I mean, some of these tours in the office, tour office hours may change and things. So just keeping an eye out, I think also would flag for folks for those emails from the White House visitor's office and things like that of like when they're going to release tour times and just, yep, if it's 8:30 a.m., like be there at 8:30 a.m. Because everyone's logging on at like 9:15 and they go so much faster, at least in my experience. But again, those times may be changing. So just keeping an eye out there and making sure that we're taking in all of that information is huge. Well, and with that, thank you all so much. And then we're going to head over towards the more administrative roles. And I will hand it over to Sierra.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sierra Fontenot. I work for the House Judiciary Committee as Chief Clerk, and I'm going to discuss best practices for administrative duties. So let me share my screen. Before I begin my presentation, I'll just give a quick background. So I originally started out as staff assistant for the House Judiciary Committee, and I was staff assistant for a couple months, and then I became chief clerk. I've only worked for the committee during the pandemic, so I've been working in a sort of hybrid fashion, but mostly just working from home. We're only really required to go in when there are hearings and markups. So most of my time is spent at my house. And when I was in college, I actually interned for the chairman in his personal office in DC. So I have a bit of experience in personal offices, but most of my experience is with the committee. So as many of you know, staff assistants, your responsibilities will differ depending on what office you're with. But for the most common tasks include being the office support person, the go-to person for really just the tedious administrative tasks that aren't always the fun, but need to get done in order for the office to operate smoothly. Like other positions on the Hill, you really have to wear a bunch of hats, including interior decorator, intern coordinator, event planner, tech support, and sometimes even driving the member. So there's a lot to juggle and there's a lot that you have to be an expert in. When I was staff assistant, the most important skills I used were organization and prioritization. You have to come up with a system that really works best for you because you're going to have to juggle a lot of different responsibilities. And that's not always easy, especially in a fast-paced and demanding environment like the Hill. So the tools I used to stay organized included keeping a really well-organized to-do list on my laptop. I made sure that I wrote everything I needed to do down because if someone tells me to do something and I don't write it down, I probably will forget. So I made sure just to keep a very organized list. I also found it really helpful to put my to-do items on my Outlook calendar because I was able to, schedule in things that I needed to do by the time. And this helped me to just visually organize my day and structure out when I needed to complete certain tasks by. There were definitely times where I had a lot on my plate and couldn't get everything I needed to do in one day. So knowing what to prioritize is really important. And knowing what you can wait until later is essential in times like that. Sometimes it's easier, I know, to get the small tasks done. But if those tasks aren't the most pressing, then I find it to be okay to just wait to do them. You want to get the most pressing tasks done, even if they're kind of bigger projects. Knowing how to delegate is also a skill that really helped me. I know many of you are the leaders of the internship program in your office, and interns can be a great resource. If there's something that you need to get done that can be delegated to an intern, it's beneficial for both you and that intern. You'll get to take things off your plate, and also the intern will get valuable experience that they can use. Because I know a lot of interns want to come back to the Hill, so it would be helpful for them to have actual staff assistant experience when they go in to apply for these jobs. I also encourage you to go in with the mindset of no task is too small. I tell this to my interns as well. But in those more junior roles, you're going to be asked to do a lot of things that people don't want to do. And people really appreciate you if you go in with the mindset of you're going to put as much effort as you put into the big task and the small task. And this will show that you're a really reliable person as well. And I feel like that is something that really helped me in terms of like professional growth, is just making sure that I'm a reliable person in the office. People will notice, and people will take that into account when you're applying for higher up positions. I also encourage you guys to ask to do more. Again, like most of the job is going to be administrative, but there are going to be times where you're less busy. And I really encourage all of you to ask people in your office to help out with things that you like that isn't part of your job responsibilities. It will allow you to grow professionally. It will allow you to get more experience in things that normally you wouldn't do. Yeah, I think that will really help you in the future as well. So in terms of navigating remote work, like I mentioned, I've only really worked on the Hill during the pandemic. I was an intern in the past, pre-pandemic times, but the bulk of my experience is in the pandemic, so working remotely. So some of the things that I felt were really helpful when I started out was virtual coffee meetings. I really recommend that you reach out to people in your office, have meetings with them that are just getting to know them, hearing about their experience working on the Hill, hearing about their experience working in your office. It will allow you to build relationships. When you're working remotely, you kind of have to go out of your way to do that. If you're in the office, it's easy to, interact with people in a more like normal way than like emailing them being like, can we do a coffee? But it's on the onus to you to kind of build those relationships if you're working remotely most of the time. So I found that people are really open to doing that. The Hill is a place where connections are really important. So I find that people are really willing to, be resources for you and share information with you. I know the other presenters mentioned this, but getting to know other staff assistants or former staff assistants who have experience working in person is also really helpful. They can be a resource for you. You can learn a lot from people. So I recommend reaching out to people who are either staff assistants right now or who are former staff assistants. Another thing that I found really beneficial was making sure that I was really responsive in the remote environment. It's easy to, step away from your computer, go downstairs, get a package, when you're working from home. But I always make sure I have my phone with me. And that's, again, the part that I mentioned earlier about being reliable. I wanted to make sure everyone knew that, if you needed to reach me, I was available, even if I'm at home. So just always making sure you're checking your phone, because a lot of the things, especially in my office, it's a very fast-paced environment, and sometimes, we have really short deadlines. So making sure that you're just available at all times during the workday is really important. But yeah, that's it for my presentation. Try to figure out how to
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so I'm curious to hear from you a little bit of best practices about following up. You've done your due diligence, you've gotten through your to-do list, and you're just not hearing back about this gosh darn picture that is framed and needs to go up on the wall. What are your best practices for following up on those sorts of tickets that we put in or other requests when we just need to hear back from another office?
Sure. I don't think I ever did framing during my time, so I can't speak to that. But I think, if you aren't getting an answer from an office, I think just having no shame and just keep reaching out every single day. If something needs to get done, it needs to get done. So I think just, keep reaching out to get the answer.
Awesome. And then we have another question for all of you folks. What are some skills that you have for de-escalating calls with constituents who are angry and or harassing the staff or intern?
Yeah, as I mentioned, you want to avoid that at all costs. And if it does get to that level, I recommend just placing them on a brief hold and reaching out to your direct supervisor and letting them take care of it from there. Maybe somebody else can jump in and see how they handle it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say MSA is actually putting together a course on this right now. So we'll have a training pretty soon. We're working with Braver Angels, who does this kind of work across the country. So, but yeah, I mean, just in general advice, it's tough. What I always tell my interns is your office should have a policy, and if you don't know it already, you should be able to talk to your, leadership team about what is policy for when you can just hang up the phone, because we always said if you reach a point where someone is like screaming, cursing, being just entirely nasty to you, like that is not your job to put up with that. And I always told my interns, for example, to hang up if it got to that point. If I was able to, if it wasn't too bad, I like to try to give people a warning, like, sir, ma'am, I really want to be able to have a conversation with you, but if you continue to use aggressive language like that, I'm not going to be able to do that. So, give them a chance to calm down. And if they can't, then hang up. And then, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with people like that is they really just want to be heard, right? I mean, it's less about what you're responding back to them and more about just showing that you're there and listening. Half the time I just felt like if I just put my phone down and then like let them talk for a half hour, that made them happier than anything I tried to say. So if it was a conversation where I felt like I could stay on the line, then just like letting them get it out of their system, and then, having the follow up not be like, oh, well, this is what my boss thinks about that issue, because like if they're at a point of angry, like they probably already know and they don't really care, that like instead of using language like, thanks so much for sharing, I completely understand, I understand why you're so passionate about this, I'll make sure to convey that to my boss and to my team, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely want to second that, of making sure that people feel heard and focusing more on what we can do than what we can't do. Just letting someone know, like, I can't speak for the congressman, I don't have that answer, over and over is definitely, as I'm sure everyone here has experienced at some point, going to make it worse. And so letting people know, like, I hear your concern, understand that you're really frustrated with this position, but we appreciate you sharing your input. It makes a difference when we hear from constituents. I'm going to be sure to pass this on. Can I get your name or your contact information so that I can make sure to pass that on correctly with your message? Have been some points that I've found helpful. Again, just like letting people know that you are taking them seriously, even if you fundamentally disagree with what they're saying or why they're yelling at you. And then also just knowing that, like, at some point, if it's not able to be de-escalated or it is no longer appropriate, that it is totally within your rights to say no, like, that's enough, and to move on. And if they call back, like, let that phone go, pick them up, or pick it up and give them another chance. Sometimes there's that miracle and that's what they needed. But yeah, just having your boundaries, but letting people know, like, I am passing on your message, I am listening, I hear your concerns, is so important. Let's see. And then we also, we've talked a lot about the importance of just doing so much and putting everything we got into the many facets of being a staff assistant. But there's a really good question about how do you kind of navigate doing a healthy workload versus taking on too much in these sorts of roles?
I can answer this question. So I think, like I mentioned, there's a lot of things that you have to do as staff assistant, and it kind of gets overwhelming at times. I really recommend taking breaks, taking a day off when you need it in those less busy times. Like, don't be afraid. I know my office is really great about promoting, like, you can take a day off. You don't have to like be on 365 days a year. So I think making sure you take time for yourself is really important. And so whenever I feel like I need a break, I request time off. And that really helps me improve whenever I am working, because I'm taking time for myself to decompress and not think about work for 24 hours.
I would add, just take advantage of your out of session days as well. Just get caught up on work and also utilize your interns. They're eager for work. So just utilize them, figure out what their weaknesses is and their strengths, and just try to utilize them as best as possible.
Yeah, I totally think it's impossible to do everything. There's always more that should be done. So if you're like, I'll just stop working when the work is done, it's like just not possible, right? So, as much as you can, especially while working from home, like have your cutoff time, like work is done at 5 or 6 or whatever it is, and don't try to go crazy working outside of hours or on weekends unless like you absolutely have to, something pressing's happening. And I mean, I think the biggest thing is like when you get so overwhelmed because there's so many things to do, it's easy to like be so overwhelmed by stress that none of your time is productive time. So you'll be working for 10 hours, but half of that time working is just like staring at your screen, like looking at it the same thing over and over again, or just sitting panicking or that kind of thing. So I find that if I give myself, like I'm going to actually take a lunch. I'm going to go and sit for 30 minutes and recover or talk to a friend or whatever, and then come back and like, here's my to-do list of, 10 things. I'm going to knock them out. Have like a really productive 2 hours instead of a half productive 4 hours where I'm on my phone scrolling on Instagram because I just like can't deal with it anymore. And then same with like keeping your constant checklist of things to do. I like to organize them by my easy tasks and my hard ones. So if you ever feel overwhelmed, or if you're like trying to get yourself to start working and you can't, you can just be like, let me start with like the 5 super easy things I can just knock out.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And before we wrap up, I quickly want to give folks another just some space. If you have any advice that you wish someone had given you before you became a staff assistant, or when you were kind of figuring out the best practices in your structure for your role.
It is not your fault if I missed the Meredith thing. I would like to not do that, but
I agree. I know we missed Meredith thing. I would like to come back and do a run anyway on Sunday.
okay.
I'm gonna draw my call now.
Oops,
Okay,
Amelia,
yes.
you're not. You're unmuted.
I can hop in here just a little to give a little insight that I experienced. I think it's okay to realize that like you're going to have times throughout your time when you're a staff assistant and beyond that you're going to mess up. There are going to be mistakes. You're going to maybe wish you did something differently. This is all a learning process, and you're going to learn throughout this job and many other jobs. Like if you become promoted to an LC, or if you move all the way up to chief of staff, like Gary said at the beginning, they're like, this whole place is a learning process. So give yourself a break. If you do mess up, if you do make a mistake, that's okay. This is a learning process. And as long as you really internalize that and you want to learn from that and you actively take steps to improve moving forward, I think that that's the important thing from there. And I wish that, when I was a staff assistant, I definitely messed up, all the time. And it was learning. And so I wish I was slightly easier on myself in those times when I did mess up, because, I've learned so much since then. So that's what I try to keep in mind now.
Yeah, to add, just keep working hard. I'm trying to do that every day myself. So I just, advise to keep working hard and learn from your mistakes, as Britton said there. And just pay attention. Everything's important that happens up here. So if you pay attention and really start to learn it, you can get the hang of things, and this would be a piece of cake.
yeah, I'll just echo what they said. Definitely don't sweat the small stuff. Like if you make a minor mistake, it's not the end of the world. People are going to forget about it within like a day. So don't, put so much pressure on yourself. Um, and I think, like I mentioned earlier, like it's just so important to know when you need a break. Because I know like I can have workaholic tendencies. So just learning when you need to take time for yourself because work life is important, but also your life outside of work is just as important. And you will be a better employee if you take care of yourself and when you are not, working. So
Yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
just like you don't need to have all the answers yourself. And so really feel free to rely on others and the resources that you have, the guides that we posted here, using First Call, making other friends on the Hill and just asking them. Like you might feel overwhelmed to try to figure everything out on your own, but the way the Hill works is like nobody actually knows, right? Like we're all figuring it out together, and like that's the best way to get your questions answers is to ask. So don't be afraid to ask.
First college can be your best friend.
Absolutely. Yes, First Call is amazing. Called First Call for a reason. I always reminded myself. But yeah, so thank you all. And there's so many participants. We're so excited to have everyone here. So thank you for being here. And definitely we'll carry forward knowing that there's so much interest and space and I think community in trying to provide resources and connect staff assistants. So thank you all for being here. Definitely encourage folks to reach out to one another, and we will do our best to continue to provide those resources and really appreciate all the interest that people have shown today. We want to be respectful of your time, and we'll wrap up for now. However, before we go, again, want to thank you all for a great discussion, and thank you to our amazing speakers for your time and insights today. And thank you to all of the staff assistants for the work that you do, and we hope to see you again soon. To stay in touch and hear about upcoming events, you can follow WCSA and MSA at our socials on Women's CSA and MSA_Cap Hill. And thank you for joining us today.